We'll get Republican State Senator Rob Sampson, who was one of the loudest and most passionate voices in a debate that went on into the evening last night, and the key committee voting 13-6 along party lines to move some proposed changes and alleged, and I say that with a tongue-in-cheek, alleged improvement in Connecticut election law ahead. We'll see what happens. Rob, it's Paul here. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So I was following, I had some information sent to me, and I'm reading all the stories today. So let's cut to the chase on the first, which I think is the biggest part of this, Rob. Am I reading this correctly, that there was a pushback by the Democratic majority to get rid of these drop boxes, and the only thing in this bill to increase that is video surveillance? Explain that to my listeners.
Yeah, so the Democrats have put together their response to the Bridgeport fiasco, and trying to respond to the many calls for improved security and voter integrity and restoring the confidence of Connecticut residents in our election process. And they put together this bill. It's a pretty lengthy bill. It's got something like 20 or 22 sections in it. But the only thing of any real significant substance is that they want to mandate that towns put camera surveillance on the drop boxes. I've been saying all along that the drop boxes themselves are a problem, and they're unnecessary. I mean, if you want to return an absentee ballot, you can do it by returning it right to town hall, or you could put it in a U.S. postal mailbox. And the purpose of having the additional drop boxes is beyond me. And, I'm not suggesting that putting cameras on them is a terrible idea, although it hasn't really proven very effective. I mean, we know about what happened at Bridgeport because of the leaked footage, which is great. But it also doesn't seem like it stopped anybody either, since the 3 subsequent elections had similar irregularities.
Rob, I mentioned earlier in the show, and I guess this was about as decent of a analogy as I could draw here. Let's say you own a business, Rob, and I know you have. I think you mentioned that, and you have an alarm system, or you have insurance covering the business, and you get a break-in, and you get a break-in or two, and then after a while, Rob, the insurance company or whoever carries you is going to say, hey, we're not going to insure you again because you have a window there that shouldn't be there, or your alarm system's not good enough. So this is kind of weird, Rob. Like, if this was the real world, and we've seen these 3 incidents that revolved around drop boxes, if this was a warehouse or a private business, you would either have to board up that window or fill the window with bricks or upgrade something to a large extent before any insurance company would want to deal with you. What am I missing here?
Right. I love this conversation because it goes right to the heart of the matter, which is that the issue is not the drop boxes themselves. The drop boxes are just the visual element that allowed us to understand what was going on, which is illegal ballot harvesting. And that is a direct result of the expansions of mail-in and absentee voting that we've passed in the legislature over the last decade. I mean, it used to be that, the total number of absentee ballots is, maybe 2% of an election, a very small number. And again, probably some problematic votes contained even in that number. But it was much less relevant than when you start to talk about having 10, 20, 30% of ballots coming in by mail. That presents real problems, especially in Connecticut, where we don't have the same protocol and integrity protections that other states that actually do a lot of mail-in voting have. Other states require photo ID, not just for in-person voting, but they also require that you submit a copy of your driver's license with your absentee ballot. They have a signature verification process where you register and actually record your signature in a very specific way. They capture it digitally so that when you send in your absentee ballot, they can match it up using a system to do so.
Sure.
We don't have any of that. We have nothing. And our voter rolls are a mess. The voter rolls contain a lot of people that have moved on, passed away. They're registered in multiple addresses in multiple cities. And we saw all that during the pandemic when the Secretary of State mailed out absentee ballots to everyone. And then you got people receiving 10 of them to their house for the people that used to live there and, the neighbor's dog. And I mean, this is unbelievable stuff. And they've done nothing to address it. So I spent yesterday saying, look, I appreciate what you've done in talking to the Democrats. I'll support your limited attention to this issue, but don't try and convince the people of Connecticut you actually did anything. So I put forth 6 amendments in a row to actually solve the problem. Fix the voter rolls, audit Election Day registration, audit absentee ballots, require signature verification, require photo ID, get rid of the unsolicited mailing of the ballot applications. That's the biggie.
Yeah.
And then, of course, put some penalties in place, real live penalties, mandatory minimum sentences for people that actually do violate election laws. And, of course, they voted them all down on election law on a party line. And I want people in Connecticut to know that that's the case. They have no interest in fixing the problem.
Yeah, and Rob, and the guest is Wolcott GOP State Senate member Rob Sampson. I mean, Rob, the stuff you mentioned, and especially I'm glad you highlighted something, Rob. People call me all the time and say, well, Paul, if you look, yes, I know other states have mail-in voting, but Rob, and especially now with the chance that we may go with, no excuse absentee balloting come, an amendment, and that's going to be basically mail-in voting. I point out to these people who call me, Rob, and email me that, yeah, these states do it, but they take several years. They put together, as you say, stringent measures like signature verification. As you say, they voted all those down with you yesterday. And what are the chances any of these, Rob Sampson, would be even remotely considered if we go with no excuse absentee ballots?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any signs the majority has any will to do this. I've been proposing these as bills, as amendments, going back probably 5 or 6 years since we started this, going down this road of no excuse absentee voting, and certainly during the pandemic when you had the major shift. That's a whole conversation by itself, but that's when we really started down the road of doing huge amounts of mail-in voting in the state. And some of us who actually know the system inside and out are like shaking our heads and like, how can you do that? We don't have any of the mechanisms or protections that other states that do this. And you see what happens. You see that the people that know how to exploit the system are doing so. And it's a real shame when you consider that so many legislative seats, municipal seats are decided by relatively small numbers. In the town of Southington, right inside my Senate district, one of the state rep races that I overlap with, decided by one vote last time, one lousy vote. And you're going to tell me that every vote that was submitted by absentee was legitimate?
Yeah.
Nobody filled them out for their kids away from, at college. No one filled one out for their elderly parent. Of course they did. And that's the problem I have with all that.
And Rob, let me ask you something, and you can answer this if I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but look, we all know, and I've been following the folks in the General Assembly for 40 years, and members on both sides of the aisle can differ on things, right? You and I both know that. But sometimes, you guys and gals, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you talk, and you talk frankly, and you talk off the record and on background. Why do you ever I'm sure you do, and which is why I could never serve up there with you guys and gals, because my head would explode. But does anybody ever allude that, like, from the other side, well, I kind of, this does make sense, but I really can't vote for this. Like, this can't be a no-brainer for everybody. I mean, some people on the majority side must support some of these things, or am I wrong?
Right. Well, I don't want to speak for anybody else, and
okay.
Certainly there's different opinions. But I don't disagree with you. I mean, these are common sense measures. Yeah. These are policy decisions that have been made in a bipartisan fashion in other places. The Democrats in Connecticut know that this system works to their benefit. That's the bottom line, and they're not about to change it. And the proof you have of that is that you have individuals, and I won't mention their names, but you can figure it out. But you have somebody serving in the state Senate right now as a Democrat who actually ran for mayor of Bridgeport against Mayor Ganem and lost that election, made the same allegations that Gomes made. But last year, when I offered many of these same changes on the Senate floor during the special session, right after the Bridgeport video came out, they voted them down. And it's inexplicable to me. I'm like, they clearly believe that while this might be a problem in their local primary disputes, they recognize that there's a benefit when it comes to statewide, combating the Republicans. And that's why they won't change it.
Yeah, and this has to be, and again, Rob, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I said this earlier in the show. As you said, this has to be somewhat of an effort to tilt some of the, not necessarily the mayor's races, although it was tried, but the big city mayor's races are generally won on larger margins. But as you say, especially in the state house, now the Senate districts are different, but these house races are decided by 150 votes, one vote, like you said. So wink and a nod, maybe. I mean, what is the point of keeping the drop boxes? I don't understand it. We have drop boxes; they're called mailboxes. I mean, I just don't get this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that the original reason for Dropbox is, there's free federal money. We have to spend it on something. Yeah. And I think that's where they came from, as a initial reason. Why we're keeping them is beyond me. And now, the fact of the matter is a lot of these towns didn't want to deal with the Dropbox.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Now you've got to find a mechanism to make sure that you are emptying these drop boxes at a certain time of day, and that you're maintaining the custody of the ballots. And it's a security concern, period. And now we're going to add to that for the towns. I mean, so I have mixed feelings about the bill altogether, which is I don't really like the idea of putting another mandate on the towns, all 169 towns, not just big cities that, already have cameras in place for a lot of reasons. I mean, I think in Bridgeport, I don't even know if that camera was, placed there for the Dropbox. I think it was just a camera that happened to be in the area that they aimed it at the Dropbox. But you're going to take small towns that have, very limited number of people actually voting and dropping things in the Dropbox, towns that have like a 2,000 population. I mean, how many votes are going to go in the Dropbox, So they're going to have to invest in cameras and, maintaining this footage and making it available. I mean, it could be a big expense for a small town.
Sure. And finally, Rob Sampson, are we sure, I guess you're never sure up there, but are we sure that both the House and Senate will take up this bill, or might there, because there are some good things I saw in this bill, might the bill be not palatable to some folks up there where they say, nah, or is there just too much of a spotlight on this?
I think the bill will go.
Okay.
I think that the Democrats, look, their purpose behind this is to do something and to be able to make the claim that they address the issue. Mm-hmm. And I just really want people to understand that, yes, I don't disagree. They're doing something, and I can agree with a lot of what they're attempting to do here, but it doesn't go anywhere near actually solving the problem. And I don't want them to get away with claiming that they have, because this is not going to fix anything. It's not going to change anything substantially. And I'm going to continue to press for my amendments. We're talking about maybe having a press conference early next week to talk about this, because the only way this changes is if you change the makeup of the legislature, which obviously can't happen until there's another election. But the only way it could happen this time is if there was enough public outcry. So I'm trying to get people interested in actually, pressing the Democrats to do the right thing and solve this problem once and for all.
GOP State Senator, Wolcott State Senator Rob Sampson. Rob, always good to have you. We'll chat down the road. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. Always my pleasure.
Appreciate it.